Controlled substances are chemicals with varying degrees of medicinal and addictive qualities and are susceptible to being abused. The Federal Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, identifies and regulates the manufacture, possession, and use of controlled substances per the Controlled Substances Act of 1970. Controlled substances may be used in research for in vivo studies, such as animal analgesia, anesthesia, or euthanasia. They may also be used for in vitro purposes, such as cell stimulation in culture or other benchtop procedures. Controlled substances are ranked into Schedules 1 through 5 based on a variety of potential abuse, dependencies, and risk factors. Schedule 1 drugs have a higher potential for abuse, while Schedule 5 drugs have a lower potential. The schedules are identified on the bottle next to the C with the Roman numeral 1 through 5. Heroin and testosterone are two well-known controlled substances. The top 3 commonly used controlled substances for research purposes are ketamine, Schedule 3, pentobarbital, Schedule 2 or 3, and buprenorphine, Schedule 3. It is your responsibility to identify controlled substances and determine their schedule, as the schedule may dictate additional authorization requirements. Which of the following is classified as a controlled substance? Ketamine, an anesthetic used in research animals, is a controlled substance. In contrast, isoflurane, an anesthetic, ibuprofen, a pain reliever, and ethanol are not DEA regulated. You can determine if a chemical is a controlled substance by looking for the letter C on the bottle. Which of the following substances has a higher potential for habit-forming dependency? Buprenorphine has a higher potential for abuse because it has been designated as a Schedule 3 by the DEA, which is a higher schedule than 4 or 5. If you're not sure whether something you're using is considered a controlled substance, review the lists found on the DEA's website. When you get there, click on the alphabetical order list and you can conduct a search for your substance. The DEA list will identify the substance, its assigned schedule, and whether it is a narcotic. Note N means non-narcotic. The list also identifies associated product names or synonyms. Listed chemicals are substances that fall under the same controls as those identified by the DEA in Schedules 1 through 5. These substances are key ingredients used to manufacture controlled substances. For example, pseudoephedrine can be used to produce methamphetamine, a Schedule 2 drug. List 1 chemicals are direct precursors or catalysts, while List 2 chemicals are solvents and other common chemicals. Please note that control is required for List 1 chemicals only. This is because List 2 chemicals have controls that are subject to high threshold amounts that generally don't apply to the average campus researcher. Which of the following chemicals can be used to manufacture controlled substances? Iodine, a chemical commonly used in the laboratory, is a key ingredient in synthesizing a controlled substance and is regulated when sold in concentrations of 2.2% or more. Chemicals that can be used to illegally produce drugs are known as listed chemicals. The DEA has identified iodine as a List 1 chemical. If you're not sure whether a chemical you're using is considered a regulated chemical, review the List 1 and 2 regulated chemicals section found at the DEA's website. When you get there, click on the list number link to conduct a search for your chemical. The last class of chemicals we'll discuss are precursor chemicals. These chemicals are regulated by the state of California because they can be used to synthesize or extract controlled substances. The list of California precursors is very similar to List 1 chemicals, and both are regulated for similar reasons, to reduce illicit manufacture of controlled substances. If you're not sure whether a chemical you're using is classified as a precursor chemical, review the list of precursors found at the State of California's Office of the Attorney General's website. Now, let's discuss Controlled Substance Use Authorizations, or CSUAs. Campuses are permitted to use controlled substances under a DEA registration. Depending on your campus, the DEA registration may be obtained and managed by EH&S, the campus pharmacy, or the principal investigator. In accordance with the DEA registration, EH&S authorizes the acquisition, use, and storage of controlled substances through a Controlled Substance Use Authorization, or CSUA. A CSUA is a document that contains specific information about how your laboratory is to use the drugs or chemicals. Each CSUA identifies the responsible individuals, called authorized personnel, cleared to work with the drugs or chemicals, the storage location, security measures, and information about how each facility plans to use the controlled substances. The application itself may require approval from your department chair. CSUAs must be updated regularly, and any modifications, such as changes to chemicals, people, or storage locations, must be approved by EH&S. CSUA information may be relayed to the DEA for registration or investigation purposes. Synthesis of controlled substances is not allowed at the University of California, unless explicitly approved by DEA and EH&S. If required for research, contact CS Program Manager for explicit DEA approval. Approval for the synthesis of controlled substances is rare and may require additional DEA registration and documentation. The CSUA must list all authorized personnel who may access and/or utilize the drugs or chemicals. To become an authorized personnel, an individual must satisfy campus personnel screening requirements, which may include providing forms, valid identification, background checks, and/or live scan. They must also complete this training and comply with campus policies and procedures. At the University of California, Davis, the process for controlled substance use authorization begins when the PI submits a personnel screening form to EH&S and completes this training. Upon receipt of the completed personnel screening form and confirmation of training, the Campus Controlled Substance Administrator will schedule a site visit with the PI to ensure all storage guidelines and security controls have been met. Any person other than the authorized custodian that uses or has access to the controlled substances must complete this training and a live scan background check through the UCD Police Department or other approved agency. Once these requirements are met, the authorized end users can be added to the use authorization. In addition to the CSUA, you must obtain pre-review authorization of proposed projects from the State of California Office of the Attorney General whenever your work involves any of the following controlled substances. For more information, visit the State of California Department of Justice website. Now, let's discuss storage site controls and security. It is your responsibility to provide effective controls so as to guard against theft, prevent illegal drug use, and protect the public from harm that may result from controlled substances under your care. When storing controlled substances, you must do the following. Consult with EH&S for CS storage options appropriate to your needs and local DEA requirements. All storage locations and storage area changes must be approved by EH&S prior to use. Store only CS and the logbook in the CS storage area that is secure, controlled by the PI, and only accessible by authorized personnel. It should also be convenient to use and in an area where security breaches can be prevented and noticed should they occur.
When managing controlled substances, do not share storage facilities. You must have your own unique storage unit. If you are in a laboratory with shared space, then each researcher must maintain their own separate storage units.
Do not transfer a controlled substance from its original container for storage purposes. It must be labeled at all times with the original information from the manufacturer. In certain cases, like that of 1 milliliter buprenorphine ampules, the manufacturer packaging is destroyed by opening the container. You may then empty the contents into a separate sterile container, label it with the original controlled substance ID number, and store it with the other controlled substances. In addition, do not store other chemicals or supplies in the same storage unit as your controlled substances. Do not store controlled substances in a corridor. They must be kept under lock and key in an area inaccessible to the public. What is the best place to store controlled substances?
Locked cabinets inaccessible from above or below are the best places to store controlled substances. Do not store in unsecured rooms, hallways, closets, nor in portable safes or security boxes that can be easily removed. Also, do not store items in the bottom drawer of a file cabinet that can be accessed from an open drawer above. By locking the space where the controlled substances are stored, you can ensure that only authorized personnel can access the substances.
Controlled substances should be stored according to schedule number or local DEA requirements. Storage areas must be locked at all times and only contain controlled substances and usage log binders. They must be secure enough to show forced entry, and portable, wheeled storage units are not allowed. Please note that some types of controlled substances must be stored in a metal cabinet. If necessary, controlled substances with different schedule numbers may be stored in the same unit, provided they are clearly separated into different compartments. Padlocks and hinges must have the mounting screws or bolts of the hasp inaccessible when the door is closed and the lock is fastened. Drawers must be inaccessible from the upper or lower drawers in the stack. Assign the top drawer of the stack to use as the storage facility. Ensure that you restrict access to controlled substances only to the authorized personnel listed on your CSUA. Additionally, make sure to keep storage key or keys in the physical custody of authorized personnel at all times. Do not store keys in an unlocked drawer or hanging unsecured on the wall. You can make multiple key copies and assign them to individual authorized personnel. It may be easiest to use a combination lock or keyless entry system. When an individual is no longer authorized to work with controlled substances or leaves the university, retrieve their storage key or change the access code. It's important to note that sharing controlled substances with other facilities, including nearby laboratories, is not allowed. You must use the chemicals for the purposes described in your CSUA. Additionally, controlled substances must never leave the University of California. Ensure that you keep the controlled substances under your care on campus at all times. Finally, do not leave controlled substances unattended or left out on top of tables without your direct supervision. At the end of your work, return unused controlled substances into storage.
In the event of a spill, make sure to secure the spill to ensure no injuries, document the spill on the log sheet with at least one witness, and include a picture if possible, and report the spill to a PI and EH&S. Please note that an incident investigation may follow.
When transporting the CS to the usage location, pack the CS and the corresponding log sheet in a sturdy box or Ziploc bag and label the box or bag with the PI's name. What would you do? Dr. Scott finished working with a diluted mixture containing 5% of a controlled substance. She must leave for the day and will resume her experiment tomorrow, but needs to clean up now. Where can she place the diluted mixture? All controlled substances, including diluted mixtures, should be placed in approved locked storage units when not in use. Do not place in easily accessible location, such as trash containers, waste containers, fume hoods, or portable lockboxes. Dr. Russell has completed his animal injections for the day. His research involved the use of a needle and syringe. How can he properly dispose of needles containing residue of a controlled substance? Dispose of needles used to inject controlled substances into a sharps container. Recapping needles increases your chances of getting a needle stick. Boxes for broken glass cannot be used for needle disposal because they are neither puncture nor leak-proof. Now, let's discuss ordering, delivery, and receipt of controlled substances. The order, receipt, and release of controlled substances are highly regulated in accordance with DEA registration. On-site documentation of order, delivery, and receipt is required. Controlled substances are obtained from off-site suppliers, and there is no on-site stock. Plan to order quantities that are sufficient for lab operations and that minimize risk of theft. California precursors must be purchased from a California supplier. Their usage purpose is reviewed by the California Department of Justice, and orders have a delay period of 21 days. At the University of California, Davis, all orders for controlled substances must be processed on a purchase requisition with an appropriate controlled substance commodity code cited through the campus online accounting program. The purchase requisition must be ad hoc routed to the approving department head or authorized designee for approval. Purchasing submits the purchase requisition to the Safety Services Business Office for final approval. With the exception of on-campus pharmacies and a very few remote locations, all controlled substances are delivered to purchasing, which takes possession of the drug and initiates a controlled substance delivery record. Purchasing notifies the PI of receipt of the controlled substance. The PI or an authorized temporary receiver may pick up the shipment and the accompanying delivery record or have it delivered for a nominal fee. An authorized signature is required for all deliveries. After receipt, ensure that you place the controlled substances in a locked storage unit immediately, together with the usage logs. Now, let's discuss usage logs and biennial inventory. Document each use of controlled substances on the usage log provided by EH&S. Fill in the date, amount dispensed, remaining balance, authorized personnel name, and reason for use on the log sheet. When recording CS use on USDA-covered species, include the animal ID. Note that the amount of controlled substance in the laboratory must equal the remaining amount recorded on the usage log. These forms must be kept in the same storage unit as the controlled substances. Document the complete use or the disposal of your controlled substance on the form. Retain usage logs for 3 years after the date of item's complete use or disposal. Follow these usage log sheet requirements. Legibly record use in pen. Write your full name and/or initials as it is displayed in the CSUA. Use correct log sheet. Ensure container ID and log sheet match. Record inventory checks on the log sheet. If an error is made and needs to be corrected, use a single strike-through, initial, date, and write a short explanation for the change. In addition to daily use documentation on a usage log, each lab is required to conduct a complete inventory of its controlled substances every 2 years or annually at some campuses. The biennial inventory is a date when everyone under that DEA registration reports their inventory. This serves as a snapshot of the inventory on hand on that date and is the basis for future DEA audits. If you have an approved CSUA, you must participate in the annual or biennial inventory process, even if there are 0 controlled substances in stock. The inventory is a federal requirement that, if not received, can result in suspension of the CSUA and stoppage of any orders. When your inventory is due, EH&S will send you an email notification with a specific date and instructions for completing the inventory. To complete your biennial inventory, reconcile your on-hand inventory with the CS log sheets to ensure all CS is accounted for and report remaining balances to EH&S on the biennial inventory date. Record keeping is an important aspect of the CS program. Documentation of all CS activities, requisitions, and personnel is evidence that each laboratory is in compliance with the terms of the campus DEA registration. Therefore, you are required to maintain all these documents in a central filing system known as a Controlled Substances Logbook or CS logbook that is easily retrievable during an inspection or audit. Separate binders must be kept for Schedule 1 through 2 substances and Schedules 3 through 5 substances. These binders must be secured under lock and key in the same storage unit as the controlled substances. In your CS logbook, keep the following records: current copy of approved CSUA, usage logs, annual or biennial inventory, disposal documentation, for example, waste pickup receipts, and training records not available electronically. Now, let's discuss transfers, imports, and exports. The transfer of controlled substances is allowed at the University of California, Davis, provided certain conditions are met. These conditions include both the transferee and the recipient of controlled substances must be authorized users. The transferee must initiate a transfer form and ensure that the transfer is properly documented on their controlled substance usage log. When the recipient takes control of the substance, they must initiate a controlled substance usage log, sign the transfer form, and immediately store the controlled substance in a secure location. The controlled substance transfer form, complete with required signatures, must be faxed to EH&S for approval the day of the transfer. The transferred drugs must be used only for the same purposes for which they were acquired. Imports and exports of controlled substances are not allowed at the University of California. Do not obtain or receive controlled substances from anyone other than purchasing or another UCD-authorized custodian through the approved transfer process. Do not ship, transport, relocate, or pass on your inventory to another facility or take any controlled substances off campus. Exports are not allowed at this University of California campus. If you have unwanted controlled substances, what should you do with them? Contact EH&S or dispose of unwanted controlled substances. Exports are not allowed, so do not ship, transport, relocate, or pass on your inventory to another facility or take any controlled substances off campus. You are only approved to use or possess controlled substances for the purposes described in your CSUA. Imports occur when the controlled substances are brought into the U.S. from other countries. CS imports require additional substance-specific licensing. Contact EH&S for additional information if an import is required. Otherwise, imports are not permitted. Who is authorized to release CS at UC? You are allowed to get or receive controlled substances from EH&S or your campus pharmacy, depending on policies at UCD. Imports are not allowed, therefore you must not obtain or receive controlled substances from anyone else, even if you have the same controlled substances in your own inventory. Now, let's discuss disposal of controlled substances. Request the disposal of a controlled substance in the following situations. When the research project ends, the CSUA expires, the CS is no longer needed, the PI terminates employment, or the CS expires. At the University of California, Davis, expired and unwanted controlled substances must be picked up by EH&S for disposal. You can request a pickup and disposal of your controlled substances through the Hazardous Waste portal on the Safety Services website. You will need to provide the name, concentration, and amount of the controlled substance for which you are requesting disposal. In situations when abandoned controlled substances are discovered during lab cleanouts, lab moves, etc., a concerted effort must be made by the department to determine how these substances were originally obtained. The original PI or department that obtained these substances is responsible for its disposal. If the original PI is unknown or unavailable, disposal of these substances will be treated by EH&S and/or DEA on a case-by-case basis. In some cases, resolution requires the department to submit a letter to the DEA explaining the circumstances and requesting the transfer of ownership of these materials for disposal. EH&S will assist departments in the disposal of abandoned substances that were obtained prior to the substance being classified as controlled, for example, cleanouts of very old labs. If you find an abandoned controlled substance, contact EH&S for assistance. Now, let's discuss diversion and loss reporting. Diversion is the act of using a controlled substance obtained legitimately for illegitimate purposes. Most regulations are established to prevent diversion. It is your responsibility to immediately report any suspicious activity to EH&S, who will contact UCPD if necessary. You may remain anonymous if you wish. Discrepancies in usage logs or disposal records may trigger an internal investigation by campus authorities. Make sure to report any problems immediately to the PI and EH&S. If a theft, loss, or disappearance of a CS is suspected, report it immediately to EH&S. This is especially important since federal law requires the campus to notify the DEA within 24 hours of a significant loss or theft. In addition, routine audits and inspections of your work area will be conducted on a regular basis to ensure compliance with the CS program and DEA registration requirements. These audits may be random and unannounced and may be performed by the DEA, EH&S, or campus committees, for example, IACUC or IBC. During an audit, you may be asked to provide your usage documentation and access to all your containers of controlled substances. Perform a self-assessment of your work area to ensure compliance. Let's discuss illicit activities and repercussions. The university complies with federal and state law, which makes it a crime for employees to illegally possess, sell, use, divert, or synthesize controlled substances. In addition, independent action may be taken regarding continued employment of anyone involved. Any member of the university community who suspects another member of such illicit activities should follow campus reporting policy. If you do not comply with established policy and procedures, you may experience a suspension, revocation, or termination of controlled substances inventory, authorized personnel status, employment, CSUA, campus DEA registration. Additionally, the DEA can assess penalties in increments of $10,000 per violation. Report illicit activities anonymously if you wish by contacting your local EH&S office to follow the campus and laboratory reporting policy. This concludes the instructional portion of this online training. You will now be tested to assess your understanding and ability to 1. Identify and define controlled substances. 2. Obtain authorizations for using controlled substances. 3. Store and secure in a controlled environment. 4. Order and receive regulated chemicals. 5. Maintain usage logs and report biennial inventory. 6. Follow campus policies for transfers, imports, and exports. 7. Dispose of controlled substances. 8. Prevent diversion and report losses. And 9. Prevent illicit activities and be familiar with repercussions. As a reminder, you will need a passing score of 80% to receive credit for this course.